$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. Only on Super NES. You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, folks. This is episode number 183 of the Super NES podcast. Joined by always by Joe. This is Greg.
Hello.
And we are coming at you this time with a flag of a game that Joe wanted us to cover. I'm not sure where he even heard about this game from, much less the inspiration behind it. We're going to find out here in just a moment. But Joe again is reaching deep into the Japanese catalog of Super NES games and bringing to the table a kind of a really, at least for us Westerners, obscure entry. What game did you want us to cover this time, Joe?
I just got to say, this is absolutely obscure. Unless you are really big into anime, this is really obscure. The game is Cyborg 009.
So, having just said that, how did you find out about this game?
So, this is one of those where Joe's up late at night before he had a corporate job, and could not get to sleep, and ended up on YouTube and found a video that said, hey, these are really good Super Famicom games that never came over to the US that you should check out. And lo and behold, I was like, hey, that's a good idea. Because, at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're not sleeping and you're watching this video, you break out the emulator and you check out the game when they suggest it. So this was one of those 4 a.m. gaming sessions that, it took me a good hour to get through a good portion of the game. But, it's an interesting one for sure. And I thought you'd had fun with this one.
Yeah. At least the game itself is interesting. I guess so. We'll get into gameplay here in a bit, but the game itself at least is interesting to talk about because it's like this is based upon a very popular. Well, I mean, moderately popular. It's hard to really gauge popularity for anything in Japan as far as anime and manga goes, because I think that,
everything's popular there.
Yeah, I mean, Cyborg 009 is not currently in production, but there was some stuff done on it fairly recently, so it's like one of those things that may come back at some point again. But I think that it looks like based upon research. It looks like based upon my research of this that it was moderately popular when it came out, but I think the main reason for that is because this has the benefit of coming out relatively early.
Yeah. This came. I don't know if it's the manga or if it's the anime, but I saw a 1966 release date, and I was just like, okay, why are they making a game 30 years after the fact? But then I saw that they've released stuff other than that. But anyways, yeah.
Yes.
So still, this is a project that dates back to basically the era of Astro Boy and Speed Racer. So that gives you an idea right there. Like, your choices weren't many.
And it's probably a reason why it was so popular.
Right.
Right. So I did not. Yeah. So I did not watch any of the anime or look at any of the manga, except brief glances here and there, but just to compare it to the video game. But So I don't know if you have any. Yes, I don't know if you watched any of the anime or reading the manga stuff.
So I didn't read any of the mangas. It's very hard to find English translated mangas for this particular series. They are available. But the other thing is I found a couple episodes that were English dubbed on YouTube, and I was able to watch those, and I did those specifically to watch them because, one, I wanted to see how the characters were in relation to how they are in the game, and then also I'll spoil it right here, but I think the graphics in this game are amazing, and it looks like an anime when you're playing it, and I wanted to compare that to the actual anime, and they actually line up pretty well.
Right. Yeah, same here. So, but Okay, yeah. So, since I'm sure most of our listeners are not familiar with this at all, I mean, I wasn't before I started playing the game and doing research for the podcast. We'll talk about the anime and the stuff that came before it a little bit here before the game, the actual game. As Joe just mentioned, this was originally like a manga, which came out. Oh yeah. Which actually first came out in 1964. And the original run ran to 1981 with some like breaks here and there. So it was created by a guy named Shotaro Ishimori, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Who he was very well known in like in the early Japanese anime / manga circles because I was working on the Super Sentai series, like the Kamen Rider series as well. So. So it was also distributed a different way. It was serialized, so that like many different magazines in Japan actually would publish it like as it came out. So it wasn't like even though there was a company behind company making it, the actual company distributing it was different because it was like being serialized that way. So. It is originally a science fiction / superhero theme going on to it. So the overall idea of this of it has not changed that much in later years because after the original manga ran its course, there was also there was like two anime films, an anime television series, like audio drama. Another television series, another anime film, so another anime television series, so another audio drama, and like a new manga, and then some other stuff. So yeah, so like on and on like it went. There was a lot of stuff I made for it. So the basic premise, like I just said, behind this has not really changed that much over the years. So basically, the plot is that 9 people from around the world are kidnapped by an evil terrorist organization, which is known as the Black Ghost, and they're forced to undergo experiments with the idea of producing them, basically turning them like cyborg weapons to advance their goals about achieving like the next world war, profit, making profit off of this, blah blah blah. You've heard this plotline before, so but. One of the scientists with the group, however, has a conscience, and he decides to help the cyborgs to rebel against them. So the 9 cyborgs, who are then renamed as basically 001 to 009, team up together. They stop the Black Ghost, letting them go on to fight like a variety of threats. So that's your basic plot line, like in a summary, like right there.
So when I read the brief plot summary of what the anime and manga were about, I kind of laughed because I automatically thought of Mega Man, where you have...
Well, there's reasons for that. We'll get into
okay.
Like in a bit, but... yeah, so anyway, like I said before, over the years, a lot of graphic novels, anime, films have come out for this. The most recent thing that came out in the series was back in a... I was back so it was back in 2015. So, like I said before, it's not currently in production, but they have done things for it every now and then. It's one of those series, in which they put to bed for a while, then they bring it back to life. They produce a short-lived series or a movie or whatever, then it goes back to rest again. So. The current rights for the franchise they now have a company called Cosmology, which is a cloud-based digital service of comics, which is actually owned by Amazon. So they have the rights like the franchise. Most of this has been released in English. As Joe mentioned, some of the stuff may be out of print and hard to find these days. But the original manga was all released in English eventually. Most of the films and anime series have also been released in English, at least they're subbed or dubbed in some format. So Obviously the franchise has the franchise has enough a fan base to keep it popular enough to warrant that, and also to the point where they keep like bringing it back out for production every now and then. But like I said, I think it's because of how old it is. Really explains a large part of its like popularity like over the years. So, and of course, like any kind of like successful series, there were video games made for based off it too, like as a result. There were 3 games made altogether. This one here, the Super NES game, is the first game that came out based upon the franchise. We'll touch briefly on the other 2 games later on as well. So the Super NES game was developed by a company called Ishimori Productions, which is the company which is behind the actual, which was actually Ishimori's himself, his production company that was actually responsible for designing the work. So the game was published by a company called Beck, BEC. They're still around today. They've been in business since 1991. It looks like most of their games have stayed in Japan, but a few of their games have come over to the West. They mostly have done over the years a lot of like anime / manga games. They did Ultraman games, Slayers, Mobile Suit Gundam. What else here? Digimon. A lot of Digimon games. Neon Genesis. Neon Genesis. How do you say that?
Evangelion.
Neon Genesis,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. So,
Evangelion.
Mobile Suit Gundam, etc., etc. So yeah, a lot of those games. So that's been their bread and butter like over the years. But curiously enough, they have also made like a fishing game, and also like they also released a Darius game. So weird entries in their catalog, which is like mostly like anime based, but but they're still a pretty big Japanese publisher. So anyway, the game itself is a typical side-scrolling platformer like the time period. 5 stages. We'll talk about the gameplay here like real quickly here. So the basic idea of the game, like you get to pick 3 out of 8 of the characters to play with. Not for stage 1. For some reason, for stage 1 they don't let you do that. And also for some gameplay reason, they decided to have Cyborg 001 not actually a character to play as. Instead the part of the game explains he's been turned into a baby. So, which is like very weird.
Well, he is a baby, and he's even a baby in the manga. But like he's got telekinesis powers. Like you could technically break the game with telekinesis powers. So that's kind of like, I feel like they put him on the sideline and made him as like the mission guy, just so they could have him in the game, but he's unplayable.
Yeah. So, so that's a good point. I mean, like, it would have been fun to find some way of using him in the game, but I guess I understand like what's what it actually makes it out. So each of the characters has their own weapons and abilities. The title screen, the actual gameplay itself is like very simple. You can change between the 3 characters on a whim. There's also an HP gauge which shows your hit points, and an SP gauge which shows your powers. As you use special abilities, that gauge goes down. Certain powers in the game will like bring it back up again. There's a boss fight at every stage. You have an intro screen, a mission briefing screen at the start of each stage, which gives you your mission briefing. There's also a mission end screen with the 3 characters talking to one another, like about the plot. You can't play this game as it is just fine, even though it is Japanese. The actual gameplay itself is in English. What I mean. So what I mean by that is, like the title screen, the options screen, it's all in English, so you can figure out, so you can actually like figure out how to play the game. the only thing in Japanese is like the actual like story. So if you don't care about the story, that's fine. But if you do want to actually see what's going on in this game, somebody has actually translated the game and released an English patch of this game available. Like if there was a ROM, like a ROM patch as well too. So if you want to actually like play the game with the story and find out what's going on with it, you can do that as well. You're not really missing that much. It's typical. Typical crazy, like like really weird Japanese anime style storyline going on here. But so the five stages that you get to play in are Japan, of course, Greece, England, Germany, and the Arctic Ocean. Not in that order, just the order, just those, just the 5 stages. So yeah. So now that I've actually talked about, the setup and actually got the actual gameplay itself going. Joe, give us your impressions of the game when you actually sat down and play it.
So my initial thoughts playing this game, when I saw it, before I even put my hands on a controller, I thought this was looked a lot like something like Treasure's Gunstar Heroes. And instead of, swapping, because, they look different, but they, we're talking 3 o'clock in the morning when I saw this video. They all look the same to me. So what I was thinking was weapons were being swapped, kind of like Gunstar Heroes. So that's what I was expecting kind of going into this. Boy, was I wrong. Going in and actually playing it, my initial thoughts was it reminded me of Lost Vikings, which,
okay, I can see
you
that. Sure.
You have your 3 companions, and in the first level you're kind of screwed. You have 3, but you're stuck with 009. Like you have to have 009,
yeah, exactly.
And then you can choose 2 others. But here's the thing: so you have 7 other that you can choose from on that first level. That's multiple possibilities, right? Well,
right.
To really beat the level, there's a certain combination of people that you have to have. So there's a lot of trial and error. It took me quite a bit to realize that I wanted basically, I think for the first level I picked 02 and 05, 005. So, quick rundown. So, we discussed 001 has telekinesis powers, and that's why he's not playable. 002 has rocket feet implants, so therefore he can fly. 003 has heightened senses, which in this game makes it so that she can see in the dark. I guess that's how that translates. It works for me, whatever. 004 shoots bullets from his hands, missiles from his knees, and then he can also turn his arm into like a blade. But in this game, he just shoots missiles. 005 has incredible strength, which he also keeps in this, but they make it short and sweet as he can break boulders. 006 wasn't changed from the anime or manga. He breathes fire. That's what he does in this game. 007 is a shapeshifter. He does the same thing here in this game. He can shift into the enemy and basically get by them without having to attack. 008 is the one big problem I have with this game is, so 008 can basically breathe underwater. That's his superpower, if you want to call it that. He's Aquaman. Let's put it that way. And that's what he's used for in this game, is to get through the water parts. And when you get to those parts in this game, it feels forced. Like, it makes no sense that there would be water there, but yet there's some water, and it's literally just to be able to use that character. And then 009 has super speed, and he does the same thing in the game. He can move super fast. So I don't know. Like I said, combinations, trial and error. I probably spent like a good 15 minutes trying to get through the first level until I realized, I didn't choose 005, who's got strength. You know what I mean? To be able to break through the rock barrier that was in my way. So there is some benefit to at least knowing a little of the backstory.
Sure.
And I mean, even if you don't know any of the backstory, it's still a great little game. It's a running gun with some puzzling aspects. Another game it kind of reminded me of was kind of Super Metroid, where like, you know, there's certain areas that are blocked and you got to figure out how to get around them. Again, same thing as like, you know, Lost Vikings, that sort of thing. I did not like that all three characters that you control have one health bar. That drove me nuts.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, you know, what's the point in like having the ability to change characters?
And what's even more of a kick in the butt is you have 3 lives, 3 continues. That's it. No save system, no passwords. You either beat it or you don't.
At least the option menu gives you the ability of like 3 difficulty levels, so you can play the game. Like,
Right, and the good thing also is they have those little EX icons that if you can find at the end of each level, you can kind of level up your double O's. So I mean that's a plus. Other than that, jumping felt weird. Like I felt fine when I jump in the air, but I felt like I was a rock coming down. And doing wall jumps, which I accidentally discovered, wall jumps are really frustrating because it's like as soon as you hit the wall, you know how like other games you can like hit the jump button and then push the direction? It's like you have to be precise and push the direction and the jump button at the same time or it doesn't register. That was really infuriating. The other thing is, I don't know if it was just me. It could have just been me, just throwing that out there. There's an asterisk. It felt to me like the hitboxes were slightly off. There was not a lot. There was a few times, though, where like I'm sitting there blasting my gun, and I swore I hit the enemy. But the enemy didn't die, and he still came at me. And he eventually died when he got closer to me. But I swear he should have been dead before that.
I noticed that also. Yeah, so... so let me start by saying, for the most part, I agree with what you just said. I know some characters do seem to have like hitboxes that are off compared to other people. I know that, so I know that's well also. So I think it's like certain characters just for some reason, the weapon they use, it's like so it's not the same hitbox. Yeah. It makes sense it would be the same hitbox because they're different weapons. But the way the game does it doesn't feel fair in some cases, I think, is the way that it's kind of it's like maybe they should have made the same hitbox regardless, just to make the game like more gamey, if that makes sense, to make it kind of like more standardized. So I mean, like,
and one more thing before you move over. The other thing is that on top of the whole 3 lives, 3 continues, 5 levels to get through, these levels are huge. So those 3 lives go quick, and so do those continues, just saying. Especially if you choose the wrong double O's to go with you, and you don't have the right combination, you find out real quick, and it's like, you just want to hit the reset button. And it gets a little harder as you get further and further in the game, that's for sure.
Yes. Yep, I agree with that as well, too. So let me start off by saying, I forgot to say this game was 1994. The first came out in Japan in February '94. It's about mid-tier Super NES game. The graphics, like you said, Joe, are beautiful looking. This game really does. It's not the best. It's not the best looking Super NES game, but for a game of its time period, it looks very good. And from looking at the anime and the anime like the Magna, they did copy the look very well in this game. I thought it's they really did. It really does look like something. It really does look very strongly inspired, by the source material. So it's like the characters look faithful. The backgrounds are detailed. The backgrounds they're detailed, very pretty. So the stages are indeed huge, like I mentioned. I do like how most stages has a lot of vertical movement as well too. Yeah. They actually feel very big because because a lot of them you have the up and down movement available to you as well too. So I have mixed feelings about that. Yeah, so I have mixed feelings. Think about being able to pick from 3 big characters. I like the fact there's a system in place to let you do that because this is very like ahead of its day with that.
Yeah.
I think. I really can't think of it. I really can't think of it. I can't think of too many other games before this that you do that. There were a few. But most of the games they were simply either like a supercharged version of a supercharged version like a regular version of yourself.
Right.
So it's like and each character like you said does have different abilities and and you do need to have certain characters to get through certain areas, kind of like so you mentioned Mega Man earlier, and Mega Man did seem to be an inspiration for this game a lot because not only is it a trial and error system to figure out which characters you need in what area, just like a Mega Man game. The gameplay reminded me a lot of Mega Man game, to be honest. As a matter of fact, this game reminded me of a strong mix between Mega Man and Castlevania, like how it played. So. Definitely Mega Man inspired as far as the actual gameplay and like the mechanics used like whatnot, which is not bad to copy off of because Mega Man's awesome. We are going to be covering a Mega Man game here pretty soon in the podcast, so hint. But
I'm also wondering, like, was this anime because of the time frame and whatever else? I'm wondering if this anime might have been at least a slight inspiration for the whole Mega Man story.
Well, this came out. The game came out after Mega Man games.
I'm talking about like the anime though, because the anime and the manga would have been influencing the people who were creating the games at that time. So that's why I'm saying, like, when I started playing and noticing these things, that's when I'm sitting there going, like, okay, like they're slightly taking from Mega Man, but also like Mega Man might have taken from Cyborg 009 the property beforehand. So it's kind of borrowing from yourself.
I haven't done any research like the Mega Man yet to see, but I would not be surprised if there was. I wouldn't be surprised if there was at least some inspiration like from that because there definitely are similarities. So I do think that some characters. The main problem I have with the character switching system, besides the problem that you mentioned earlier about the hitboxes and shared life gauge, which why did you do that? Certain characters are very overpowered compared to others. For example, 007 because of his shapeshifting ability is a must-have throughout the entire game because I simply played him and flew as much as possible to get through stages. Like the areas that I could, I'm just like, if the areas could, I'm just like, forget all this, just like
man, that's the major cheese right there.
So. But the game that you do that's the thing. It's like, of course, if they wanted to encourage you to play the game more normally, they should have something to research that. But, like I said, I'm happy with the fact the game allows you to pick characters, and they are faithful to their anime counterparts, but for the most part, the gameplay is just not balanced well enough to properly reflect that. So, which of a game of this time period, maybe this is the best they could do because space limitations like whatnot. So the other games based on the anime did get around that problem in different ways, which we'll talk about here later on. But so it's like the Arctic Ocean was just basically a stage created, as you said before, to force you to use a certain character.
Right.
So. Which again I'm okay with. I just wish there was a more fluid way of you doing that, like in the game. So, so if you know what you're doing, the game itself is not that long. The game itself is not that long to get through. It's a typical 45 60 minute gameplay from start to finish. If you're a good player, know what you're doing. So. I do like the fact there are difficulty settings at least, and you can also change the controller layout if you want to, which is nice. So, the boss fights are not that bad. Most of them are fairly easy once you're in the pattern. So, except for the last boss fight, which is still a big challenge. It takes a while to wear him down to beat him to win the game.
Right.
So, but it is a final boss fight. So so you get what you expect. But the music in the game also, by the way, I think is very good. It's a very good soundtrack. It's a very heavy soundtrack, if that makes sense. There's a lot of heavy bass instruments used in the soundtrack to kind of give it, kind of subconsciously give you that whole metal feel to it, which kind of matches the theme of the game since you're playing as cyborgs. So, it's a very good musical soundtrack, I thought.
Yeah, I love the soundtrack. That's one of the other similarities that I think it has to Super Metroid is that the music is fantastic. It sets the mood perfectly. And also, small little note, if you start the first level and just kind of let the music play and not shoot or do anything and just let the music go, it's actually playing the theme song to the Cyborg anime, which is pretty awesome.
Yes, yep, I forgot to mention that. Yes, a good point. So,
and it sounds really good. If you listen to both side by side, because I had to, because I was this is really good, and I wanted to see how faithful it was to the original, and I was like, wow, I was surprised.
Yeah. Yep. That's an excellent point. So, overall, this is a pretty typical platformer game. Pretty typical platformer game of the time period. And most reviews of the game, tend to agree with that. I couldn't really find anything for reviews of the game when it came out originally, in Japan, because Japan, if I could read Japanese, of course, I'd be you help. But the modern reviews of this game, give it a pretty average grade of 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, that kind of stuff. So very typical. Very typical platformer. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, if you're familiar with the anime, the Magna, you'll probably enjoy the game more because you know the characters, you know the background, that kind of stuff. But if you just want to play but if you're just if you're a big platformer fan, and/or want to check out a more obscure Japanese anime style game, this is very good for that. Otherwise, there's nothing. Otherwise, the game just kind of meh in many areas. But even despite the great graphics, the great music, the innovative gameplay, the actual mechanisms of making it work and how it executes kind of falls flat in some areas. So it's I really can't suggest this game to anybody unless you are one of the people who either knows the source material, enjoys platformers, or wants to check out a more obscure Japanese game. I would not call this game a hidden gem in the system, but because because there are much better platformers available for the system than this. But having said that, the developers did at least make a very faithful effort to try to copy the look and feel of the game. Of the anime into the game, and for the most part, I thought they did a very good job.
And you know what? I 100% agree with you. I am surprised at how well the game came across without that much knowledge of the anime. With just basic knowledge, I could understand what was going on in the game, especially with the English patch. But outside of that, I wouldn't recommend this. Was it fun? Yeah, it was okay. Once I understood everything that was going on, it was a lot more fun. So in that sense, I can suggest it. Once if you play it a little bit and you like it and you enjoy it, then yes, please go back to it because I think you'll enjoy it. But if your idea is to just kind of test it out and see where you are on it, emulate it. I'm sure Greg's going to talk about pricing.
Yes.
But emulation all the way. That's all I can say.
Obviously, the series does have some very passionate fans, however, because I was surprised this game actually has I was actually surprised you told me that this game has English patch available for, because not every Japanese game gets translated, obviously, and like I said before, it's not. This is not a very heavy Japanese language game,
Right.
so it's like obviously there are some like big fans of the game out there. Like they're going to go through the time and hassle to do that. So like I said, the translation does help you understand the game more but you don't need to be able to. Like to be able to you don't need it present to be able to just enjoy the gameplay. So, but so I mentioned before that there were two other video games also came out. They came out based upon the anime, slightly original Magna. Obviously, being mostly Japanese, these games also Japan only. A year after this came out in 1994. There was a very similar game that came out for it, like on the Sega CD. So, which was developed by Riot and published by Nippon Telnet. That game is also very similar to this game in some ways. It's your typical action side-scrolling platformer game. You only get to play Cyborg 009 in that one. So like I said, that problem right away by just saying, okay, you're here and that's it. So, like one character. The interface is similar. The game also makes heavy use, because it's a Sega CD game, of clips from the anime. So it's like so you watch a few minutes of the anime, all in Japanese, of course. Then you play a stage, then some more anime, then you play some more, then some more anime, and so on and so on. So because of all this, the actual length of the game is shorter than the Super NES game. There's probably even with the anime, long plays of this game on YouTube run about 45 minutes, so it's a much shorter game because of that. But that's also very typical, like early CD-based games. They're all like they're so heavy on like movie scenes or like anime or like whatnot, that the actual gameplay can suffer in some cases, unfortunately. And this is the game itself. The game itself like looks fine. I'm sure it's like I said, it's very similar to the Super NES game. It's just like unless you know Japanese, however, there's not really any reason to check it out because it's never translated. So, then there was curiously in 2002, a game called Simple Character 2000 Series Volume 15 Cyborg 009 The Block Gajushi, which was published by Bandai, and as the name may suggest, it is a Arkanoid style breakout game where there's still a story of the game. There's still like cutscenes and whatnot explaining what's going on, but the actual gameplay is just basically Arkanoid. Yeah. So very very curious game. It actually it looks pretty good for what it is, but like enjoy Arkanoid games and have a way to playing Japanese PlayStation games. It's something worth something like worth certainly looks worth.
Yeah, I was gonna say that definitely sounds like something that's worth checking out for sure.
But it's very weird that they made a game based upon Cyborg 009 like this. It's like okay. Weird application of the law. Weird application of the license is all I can say.
I mean, I also thought that it was weird, like, the newest game is a pachinko machine, but also, like, it's the Japanese, so it shouldn't have been a surprise.
No. No, not really, so, but, so anyway, so, Joe mentioned eBay a moment ago. Obviously, this game being Japanese only is going to make it a bit harder to find. This actually is one of the most rare games on eBay I've seen. Like in a very very long time. So it's like there are copies of the game available online. You can't find them if you want to, but your choices for the game are like very limited. Because I only found when I did research on this game recently. I only located 2 copies of the game that are currently for sale. 1 copy recently sold like in the last 90 days. Like I said, it's there. But you're just going to have like very much choice as far as it goes. All these copies are based in Japan. So of course this pricing always includes shipping. So keep that in mind as far as the shipping costs go, because these prices do include the shipping costs. The copy is currently for sale. One was card only. They're asking $90 for it. One was CIB, and they're asking $350 for it. So, kind of gives you an idea of how much rarer that the CIB copy is. Which not
Yeah, and that one that sold was cartridge only for $55. So
$65 actually.
So I mean, I think about it this way: even if you import it or whatever, you're paying full price for a Super Famicom game that's 30 years old, that you may or may not end up liking. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Like I said, emulate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, this is for, this is for folks who either like a big fan, like a big source material, or like somebody trying to compile a physical like Super Famicom collection. So, but at least the game is available to find. So it's not like so it's not like super rare. So that's good at least. So anyway, so interesting game to check out. Interesting ideas. Some very good graphics and music. Just like the actual gameplay mechanisms in some ways though just like fell flat. Well, we haven't talked about this. The stage designs also kind of felt boring to me as well. They weren't very inspired. I don't think. Neither were the enemies. Like it's all just like pretty much like run of the mill stuff.
Yeah, and I mean it was a lot of repeat enemies, which was unfortunate. A lot of assets reused.
Yep.
And like I said, like the biggest thing for me was like water parts of the level just being there because hey, we need to use 008 for a reason. You know what I mean? Like any other reason, like there was no reason for water to be in that level, but it was there. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really did feel like the developers spent most of their time and effort trying to make the graphics and music like look and feel like anime as much as possible, and the gameplay was kind of like a secondary consideration, unfortunately. But which is a shame because like I said before, the actual idea of being able to pick characters and to play from and switch between them during gameplay is like it was very neat. So so I do like that aspect of the game. It just could have been executed better, unfortunately. I thought.
I agree.
So, but Anyway, though, very interesting game to check out. So I I did not mind looking at this game for sure. So I'm perfectly okay with this one. Play this one that you brought to the table for us, Joe.
Good.
So, no cheat codes available with this game, from what I could find online. So, so like Joe mentioned, like the 3 continues. Once you're gone, they're gone. So there's no password. But to be fair, most platformers didn't. But to be fair, most platformers didn't have a password system like anyway. So,
True.
But as I said, the game can be played like under an hour, like if you're good at it. So. And there are tool assisted speedruns on YouTube, which is like 15 minutes. So,
of course, there is.
There's also so there's also that as well too. So, anyway, I think we've talked about this for as much as we can do here with this one. So, next game we're going to be talking about, kind of a combination of like Joe Me's picks because it's like it was still like Joe's pick for a game. Like I suggested a game that a friend had mentioned recently. So he was agreeable to cover it. So, so it's kind of a combination pick here at this point. We're looking at next time Goof Troop, Capcom game, but again a platformer. But at least being Capcom, it should be like a much better platformer. Based off the Disney television series, the same name.
Yep.
So, should be interesting to check out. So, but anyway, and the game also has multiplayer mode. We may have to look into that if our time allows, also, Joe. So, but anyway, so. As always, we appreciate you listening to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, feel free to leave them for us on the Facebook page. Or you can also send me an email if you want to at the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you?
You can find me on my very public Facebook page. Look me up. And also on Twitter at JOESUX30.
All right. Thank you very much thanks always for checking out the podcast, everybody. And we'll catch you again next time. Stay safe, be well, and
bye.
Later all.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Steam Pong.